Morning. I wanted to start this series of what I was calling weekly sparks. And before I turn the camera around and launch into a video in my art journal today, I wanted to give you a little background on where this came from. I started teaching online art journaling classes during lockdown, and the first of them I named Sparking Creativity. And the classes are designed to be encouraging of the art journal process for anyone, no matter what their artistic background is. The first group of people were a lot of my friends, also, in lockdown, the same as me, without shows, without the arts festivals where we would normally see each other in person. So we started building a community and being there for each other and having that sense of camaraderie, all connected by the art journal. And while some of those students had art studies in their background, others did not. And the initial classes were heavy on techniques and collage and image transfer, because I wanted to take the pressure off anyone, that feeling that they can't draw, that they don't know how to get what's in their head onto the page. So collage is usually a tool that can facilitate that. So, from Sparking Creativity from those technique-based classes, I was using my YouTube channel as a place to put my videos up for students. And my students and I have gone through a full year of classes that I've designed based on the seasons. And they're continuing. I have students right now in the winter session as I'm filming this on December 20th in 2021. But my lessons in the classes tend to be very symbolic and very in-depth and very much inspired by the myth and folklore, by goddesses, by legends. That's what inspires me so much. So that's my place of the scholar, and that's where my inspiration lies. So I wanted to start this series of videos that's kind of the polar opposite to that. Things that are quick, things that it could be a technique-based video, it could be inspired by a material, it could be inspired by a pattern on a piece of junk mail, but something that's a lot more spontaneous and a lot kind of quicker, kind of finding that flow, but responding to what's on the page and learning to trust kind of your intuition and your artistic sensibilities to see what a piece might need next. So with my background as a teacher, yes, there might be an element of instruction in these, but really you're going to be looking over my shoulder as I create some pieces purely for the fun of creating. The art journal process, to me, I find very grounding. Sometimes it's a place where I can vent or work through something that's emotional or something that's troubling me, but other times it's a place where I can simply play and kind of get lost in the moment and get lost in enjoying the materials. So time kind of stops and I end up feeling really refreshed. So these are going to be weekly sparks, and they're going to kind of continue and flow. For example, today's video, I'm going to do some backgrounds. Not really backgrounds, but maybe first layers in watercolor on some papers. And then I'll come back to them and see what else they need. So, weekly installments of kind of quick, spontaneous things that I'm doing on the page, that I'm doing in my art journal. So let me turn the camera around and we'll get started for today. So what I have prepped, I have actually 6 pages. This was a very inexpensive watercolor tablet that I bought and tore the pages in half. I'm going to be working on the textured side, not the extra smooth side, just because that's my preference. And since it's inexpensive paper, this is kind of intended to be the top surface. I think I might not use all the ones that I have prepped, but I think I'm going to do 2 where I tape down the edges. Excuse me. I'm just taping them down to these pieces of chipboard. So this will give me, It'll keep the paper flat while I'm working, since paper does sometimes curl up when it gets wet. But it's also going to give me this clean edge. This masking tape is going to create that frame masking off the edge of the paper. So the tape is see-through enough. I'm just trying to eyeball it and have approximately the same dimensions. And it's about maybe 3/8 of an inch. While you could measure and do something precise, that's kind of going against the purpose of these faster, quicker, spontaneous, sparking creativity pieces. I'm going to mask off an extra segment on this one just to have it be a little asymmetrical. This might be a nice place to add some text later or something. So I don't really have a plan. That just occurred to me while I was masking these off. So this is one watercolor palette that I have. I'd set it up as a travel palette, but it has some really lovely jewel tones that I like to use. They are mostly Daniel Smith brand. I just love the color intensity of those. My paper is dry, so I'm just going on with some really intense color. But then letting it flow out a little bit. So you can see how much the paper is curling up, and it is creating some pooling, which I can play with and let run a little bit, because these are just kind of playful pages. That's kind of great. I'm just going to set that aside to dry. That's where I'm going to leave that one. No plan. Just some colors. And I did keep kind of a loose border on that one. It's an organic edge. It's not a perfectly straight line. So I've used undersea green and Amazonite and some rich green gold, and just kind of repeating those. Oh, no, that was Cascade green, because I stuck my brush in the wrong one. And letting the watercolor blending happen. On this one, I think I will sprinkle in a tiny bit of salt. And as that salt absorbs some of the excess moisture on the page, it creates little starburst effects. I did kind of pop the page so that it wouldn't continue to curl in that way. So hopefully this will dry a little bit flatter and the puddles will stay within the borders. Now, if that kind of thing bugs you, then having it taped down is great, because you're not going to have that curl. So you might even be able to control the drips and do some drips on purpose. I tend to work in analogous colors, related colors, whatever phrase you want to use, but I tend to work with things that are a little bit related on the color wheel, because at this point in time, I don't know what I'm going to do with this page. Also, mixing things can, if I put some blue in this orange right now, it can get really muddy. Doesn't have to, if you're careful and don't let them mix a little organically, but don't brush over them too many times, then you can get some nice kind of tones where they bleed together a little bit. So I'm letting them touch. I'm going to drop in a little water in some areas to kind of let them do that watercolor dance a little bit. But I'm not going to go over them, back into them, because that kind of blending will give me mud. And on this one, if I want to, I can also spray it with a little water. And let those drips start to happen. I'm going to stop while I'm ahead. So again, it helps kind of unite the colors without them getting too blended. There's some really nice combo happening here and up here, this kind of bluish gray. So we're going to leave that. I love this really intense indigo in the corner. Hopefully that tape is going to keep the masking, so we'll get that sharp white edge. So that's kind of exciting. So, complementary colors are possible. It's not what I normally do. It's not my preferred aesthetic, but it completely is possible. So there's one kind of greenish one. All right, let's do something with some neutral tones. So I'm not sure how well you can see it on camera, but you can almost see the paint does this kind of granulation thing. Now there's a pattern I can see of the texture of the paper, but there's also some granulation. It's almost like, cracks in a dry riverbed or something, so you can see the paint kind of separate out and do its thing. That's one of the reasons why I love the Daniel Smith, is because they do stuff like that. So these 4 are completely wet, and there's not a darn thing that I can do with them right now. There's a lot of indigo in this one. There we go. That bright spot was bugging me. So I'm going to let these dry, and this kind of brings us to the first, that's the first weekly spark that I wanted to bring you. Stay tuned next week, because these will be dry, and I'll be coming back in, whether I go back in with collage or stenciling or both or direct mark making. I'm not sure. We'll see what inspires me when these are dry. So for now, I hope that sparks some creativity, and I hope you have time to take it to the page. Thanks. I'll see you soon.